You know those moments, right? When you suddenly catch yourself doing something. Maybe something you promised yourself you wouldn't do.
Oh, absolutely. Or when someone you think you know really well just acts completely out of character.
Exactly. It's almost like, I don't know, like we've got this hidden part of ourselves. Maybe Greene calls it a stranger within us, something pushing us around.
Yeah, this little demon almost.
Yeah.
Nudging us into these surprising, sometimes, let's be honest, self-destructive patterns.
And we often don't have a clue why, right? We just grab onto these simple explanations like, oh, something just came over me. But that never really feels like the full picture.
It really doesn't. And I think that's because, as Greene points out, many of us just kind of live on the surface.
Yeah.
We react emotionally. We form these quick, often simplified opinions.
Skimming the surface.
Exactly. But what if we could actually dive deeper, get below that surface level to understand what's really driving human behavior?
Like why some people turn envious or why others just seem to act so irrationally even when it hurts them?
Precisely. And understanding this stuff, it's not just about figuring other people out or judging them. It's really about getting clarity on ourselves.
Breaking our own negative patterns.
Yes, and gaining, better control, real control.
Okay, that's a really powerful idea. So today we're taking that deep dive. We're exploring Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature.
It's a fascinating book, really dense, but full of insights.
Our mission here is to pull out some of the most important nuggets from this incredible book to help you understand not just what these laws are, but maybe more importantly, why they actually matter in your day-to-day life.
Sound good?
So as we dive in, where do we start? What's the bedrock concept Greene wants us to get first?
Well, let's kick off with something pretty fundamental and maybe a little challenging to how we usually think about ourselves. It's the inherent irrationality of human nature.
Irrationality, okay.
Yeah, Greene really pushes back against this common idea that our behavior is, largely conscious and willed.
That we're mostly logical actors making deliberate choices.
Right. The reality, he argues, is quite different. He says, we are subject to forces from deep within us that drive our behavior and that operate below the level of our awareness.
Below awareness, so we don't even see them.
Often, no. We see the results, our thoughts, our moods, our actions, but we have surprisingly little conscious access to what's truly compelling us, what's pulling the strings.
Wow. So if we're not as in control as we like to believe, where do these deep forces actually come from? Are they just random?
Not random, no. Greene traces this human nature, as he calls it, right back to the basic wiring of our brains, our nervous system, the way we process emotions.
Stuff developed over millennia.
Exactly. Millions of years evolving as social animals. Our earliest ancestors, their survival absolutely depended on cooperation, on group cohesion. And that required developing complex emotions.
Like joy, shame.
Joy, shame, jealousy, gratitude, guilt, all these things that help us navigate complex social landscapes. They help bind groups together. And the thing is, that wiring hasn't gone away.
So we're still running on that old software.
In many ways, yes. We're still highly susceptible, as Greene puts it, to the moods and emotions of those around us. Think about it, how easily we unconsciously imitate others. You yawn, I yawn.
Or get swept up in a crowd feeling, like at a concert or a protest.
Precisely. Viral feelings. We're constantly seeking status, comparing ourselves. We naturally divide the world into insiders and outsiders. That's deep tribal stuff.
And Greene also talks about us wearing masks.
Yeah, that we learn to present a certain face to the world, maybe hide the parts of ourselves we don't like, the darker desires. He calls this the shadow personality.
And that's where the something came over me excuse comes in, when the mask slips or the shadow leaks out.
That's also the explanation we give ourselves, yeah. It helps us maintain our self-image, even when our actions contradict it.
It's kind of unsettling, isn't it, to think these ancient impulses are still so powerful, even with, smartphones and the internet and everything. Does technology change any of this? Or does it just amplify it?
Greene argues it strongly amplifies it. Take social media, for example. It's sort of heightened how permeable our emotions are.
Makes sense. Things go viral so fast, moods spread like wildfire.
Exactly. Viral effects sweep through populations in real time. And you see how manipulative leaders can tap into those tribal tendencies, right? Stir up fear and division with incredible ease.
And online aggression. It feels much more open now.
It is. The virtual world provides a space where maybe that shadow personality can come out to play with fewer immediate consequences. Plus, our need to compare ourselves, feel envy, seek status. It's all intensified, constantly stimulated.
Okay, this paints a pretty powerful picture of collective irrationality.
Yeah.
Can you give us a concrete example, maybe something big, where you can really see this playing out on a grand scale?
Yeah. A really potent example Greene uses is the 2008 financial crash.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, loads of explanations were thrown around afterwards, right? Cheap credit, complex derivatives, greedy lenders, lack of regulation.
All the usual suspect.
Right. But Greene argues that all those explanations kind of missed the core issue, the basic irrationality that drove these millions of buyers and sellers.
How so?
People just got infected with this lure of easy money. It led to this wave of unbridled optimism.
The whole mentality.
Totally. People ignored really clear warning signs. They ignored the historical patterns of previous bubbles, like, 1987 or going way back to 1929. It's like collective amnesia.
So the regulations, the technical stuff, it wasn't the root cause.
According to Greene, no. The uncomfortable truth he puts forward is that no regulatory force on the planet can control human nature. Bubbles keep happening, crises repeat, because we don't confront the real source of the problem.
Which is our fundamental built-in irrationality.
Exactly. We're just prone to making the same kinds of mistakes because we're not looking inward at the true psychological drivers.
Okay, wow. So if our minds are just inherently prone to this kind of irrationality, this collective delusion sometimes, how on earth do we start to become more rational? Is it even possible to swim against that tide?
That's the crucial question, right? And Greene is actually quite optimistic here. He insists that rationality isn't some magic power you're born with or not born with.
It's not fixed.
No. He says it's something acquired through training and practice. It's a skill you develop.
Like learning an instrument or a language.
Kind of, yeah. It takes conscious effort and discipline. He points to historical figures like Pericles, the Athenian statesman, as sort of ideals of rationality.
What did Pericles do?
Well, Pericles aimed for what Greene calls a state of balance, a state where your impulses and your emotions serve your thinking process rather than secretly hijacking it.
Okay, so how do we train for that? What's the process?
Greene breaks it down into roughly 3 steps.
Right.
First, you need to become aware of what he calls low-grade irrationality.
Low grade. What's that?
That's like the subtle stuff, your daily moods, your biases, the little emotional currents that quietly skew your thinking without you even noticing. Confirmation bias, wishful thinking, that sort of thing.
Stuff that colors our judgment every day.
Exactly. Then second, you need to understand high-grade irrationality. That's when emotions really flare up: anger, fear, euphoria, and lead to much more rash, sometimes even disastrous actions, the big blow-ups.
Okay, recognize the subtle stuff, understand the big flares, then what?
Then the third step is actively enacting strategies to counteract them. Things like giving yourself time before reacting, analyzing your emotions, seeking out different perspectives, considering the long-term consequences.
So it's about self-awareness and then active intervention.
Precisely. It's about fully accepting that nobody is exempt from the irresistible effect of emotions on the mind. Nobody. But we can build the capacity to manage that effect, to gain more conscious control.
All right, that makes sense. It's a path, not a switch.
Right.
So, okay, once we start down that path, once we begin to understand this, let's say, stranger within ourselves and just how irrational we can be, what does this mean for how we deal with other people?
Ah, yes. That's the next crucial layer.
How do we navigate relationships, work, everything, knowing everyone else is grappling with this too? How do we avoid, those really toxic types Greene talks about, the ones who can cause so much damage?
This is exactly where understanding character becomes absolutely paramount.
Character, not personality.
Character. Greene makes a distinction. He emphasizes that character is like a stamp imprinted on us from our earliest years. It's formed by these really deep layers, like our first relationships with parents, what psychologists call attachment patterns or schemas, and the habits we develop very early on.
And that stamp? Can we change it?
Greene argues it's basically impossible to completely get rid of it. It's sort of neurologically wired in. But, and this is key, through awareness, we can understand our own patterns and mitigate the negative ones. We can learn to manage them.
Okay, so understanding our own character helps, but how does it help with others?
The crucial step is to start seeing character as the primary value when you're choosing people. People to work with, people to hire, maybe even intimate partners.
More important than, say, how charming they are, or their reputation.
Much more important, Greene insists. We get easily swayed by superficial stuff, charm, intelligence, connections, public image. But deep down, it's their character that will determine how they act over the long haul, especially under pressure.
So being able to read character.
He says it's an absolutely critical social skill.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to observe people, not just listen to what they say, but watch their actions, see their patterns over time. That's vital.
It sounds like we really need to train ourselves to look past the shiny facade people put up. Can you give us a good example of someone missing this, maybe ignoring the signs?
Yeah, there's a really telling story Greene uses about Jeb Magruder. He was interviewing for a job in the Nixon administration with the Chief of Staff, Bob Haldeman.
Okay, high stakes.
Very. And Magruder was initially super impressed. Haldeman seemed brilliant, fiercely devoted to Nixon, really organized, the whole package.
Sounds good so far.
But then a tiny incident happened. They needed golf carts for a tour of the grounds, and none were immediately available. And Haldeman just lost it.
Lost to how?
He became frantic, started railing at those in charge, was described as almost hysterical, just completely disproportionate anger and loss of control over a minor inconvenience.
Oof. Red flag.
Huge red flag. Magruder himself later admitted he should have seen this incident as a sign that Haldeman was not what he appeared, that he had control issues in a vicious streak.
He ignored it.
He ignored it. He was probably dazzled by the power of the position. And, well, history shows Magruder paid a heavy price later during Watergate, caught up in Haldeman's world.
Wow. That really illustrates Greene's point, doesn't it? He says people never do something just once.
Exactly. That little crack revealed a fundamental part of Haldeman's character. Those flaws, whatever they are, they will surface again, often bigger and bolder, especially when triggered.
That's a chilling thought. It really highlights how character can be revealed under stress. Or maybe even more telling, when someone gets power. I'm thinking of someone like Lyndon Johnson. He seemed to change so much once he became Senate Majority Leader.
Johnson is a perfect case study for that. Absolutely. Sure. While he was climbing the ladder, rising through the ranks, he played the role of the courtier perfectly.
Meaning
he seemed deferential, eager to please, always trying to anticipate what powerful people wanted. Very agreeable, charming even.
But that wasn't the real him.
Well, once he got ultimate security, as Greene puts it, once he was the Senate Majority Leader and didn't need to please everyone anymore, a different side emerged. He apparently relished the power he had to upset or humiliate those who had crossed him.
How would he do that?
Oh, petty stuff, but telling. He'd deliberately talk only to an assistant if he disliked a senator, pointedly ignoring the senator themselves. Or he'd conspicuously get up and leave the Senate floor, sometimes taking others with him, right when someone he disliked started speaking.
Wow, that's cold.
It is. And Greene's point is, these nasty signs weren't new. They were probably there earlier in his career, just suppressed or masked by his need to climb. Once he had the power, the mask could come off.
So power doesn't corrupt, necessarily. It reveals.
It often just reveals. It removes the constraints and shows you who the person fundamentally is when they don't have to pretend anymore.
Okay, that's a really powerful insight. So if people are always sort of leaking clues about their true character, how do we get better at actually seeing these subtle signs in just everyday interactions? Because honestly, it often feels like we're easily fooled.
It's definitely a skill that needs developing. And this brings us to what Greene calls empathic skill and the ability to decode nonverbal cues, the language beyond words.
Body language, tone of voice.
Exactly. He uses the example of Milton Erickson, the famous hypnotherapist. Erickson contracted polio when he was 17 and was temporarily paralyzed, basically confined to a chair, unable to speak much.
Terrible, but how did that help him?
Well, stuck there, he spent hours just observing his family, particularly his sisters. He started noticing tiny things. How a verbal yes could actually mean no if the voice was flat or there was a fleeting smirk.
Micro-expressions.
Things like that, yeah. Or how tension in someone's face or the way they held their body could betray hidden feelings or desires that contradicted their words. He learned to read the second language, as Greene calls it.
The unspoken language.
Right. Erickson realized that nonverbal communication isn't just something you intellectually decode. It must be felt physically. You have to connect with that more primal animal part of observing.
So you're tuning into moods through body language.
Yes, by attuning himself to the changing moods as reflected in their body language, Erickson apparently became a superior social actor himself. He could sense others' inner states and build incredible rapport.
Because we're all actors, really, wearing masks.
Greene argues we are all consummate actors, constantly managing impressions. And mastering this art of impression management isn't just about reading others. It's also about becoming more conscious of the signals we send out nonverbally.
Controlling our own masks in a way?
Consciously, yes. Think about public figures. Someone like Michael Jackson, for instance, created this incredible allure, partly through strategic management of his public appearances, his elusiveness.
Creating mystery.
Exactly. Generating desire through strategic elusiveness and controlled mystery. Or go way back to Emperor Augustus in Rome. He deliberately projected these saintly qualities: humility, simple living, contrasting himself sharply with rivals like the flamboyant Mark Antony.
Even though he held immense power.
Absolutely. He was tightly controlling the reins, but his image management, his nonverbal projection of simplicity and duty, was crucial to consolidating that power. It's all about shaping perceptions.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding our own irrationality and then developing the skill to read character and nonverbal cues or others. So let's say we start getting better at this. How can we use this deeper knowledge, this understanding, to actually motivate people, maybe influence them positively, make our own path in life a bit smoother?
Right. This naturally leads us to what Greene calls the law of desire.
Desire, okay.
The fundamental idea here is that humans are, well, we're not easily contented with our circumstances. We perpetually suffer from a kind of grass is always greener syndrome.
Always wanting what we don't have.
Pretty much. The moment we actually possess something, the moment it's ours, our minds almost immediately start drifting towards something new, something different, something perhaps more distant and unattainable.
Our imagination just runs wild.
Exactly. Our imagination is limitless, constantly conjuring up visions of better circumstances, different possibilities. Greene argues this makes the syndrome basically inevitable. It's baked into our psychology.
Which can drive progress, I guess, but also makes us constantly restless.
Both things, yes. It's a source of innovation, but also a source of deep, perpetual discontent if we don't understand it.
Okay, that's a really fascinating and, very relatable human tendency. So how do we work with that? How do we harness it to maybe influence others rather than just being constantly pulled around by our own desires?
Well, here's where Greene gets a bit provocative. He argues quite bluntly that people do not want truth and honesty, no matter how much we hear such nonsense endlessly repeated.
Whoa, okay, that's a strong statement. People don't want truth.
He claims that what they truly crave deep down is fantasy and objects of desire to covet and grope after, things that spark their imagination.
So the key to influence isn't raw facts, it's shaping perception, exciting their imagination.
That's the core idea. It's about shaping perceptions and exciting them, lifting them out of their ordinary reality, stimulating their imagination, making them want something.
Can you give us an example of someone who really understood and mastered this art of creating desire?
A fantastic example Greene explores is Coco Chanel, particularly with the creation of her legendary perfume, Chanel No. 5.
Ah, Chanel, okay.
Chanel herself was apparently driven by this deep, perhaps vague longing, as Greene puts it, for the kind of power and freedom she saw men possessing in her era. You see it reflected even in her clothing designs, freeing women from corsets, using more comfortable fabrics.
Channeling her own desires into her creations.
Exactly. And with her perfume, Chanel No. 5, she deliberately surrounded it with this aura of mystery.
How did she do that?
For starters, she never revealed the exact recipe. It was kept secret. She also cultivated mystery around herself, telling numerous contradictory stories about her past, making herself an enigma.
So the creator was mysterious, the creation was mysterious.
Right. And the perfume itself wasn't simple. It was complex, deliberately not identifiable as a particular flower, unlike most perfumes of the time. The name, Chanel No. 5, was stark, abstract. The bottle was minimalist, modernist, everything defied expectations.
Okay, so she built this mysterious object, but how did that translate into people actually wanting it so badly? What was the strategy there?
This is where it gets really clever. She created what Greene calls rivalries of desire, social contagion, essentially.
Oh.
She didn't just launch it with a big ad campaign initially.
Right.
First, she started by subtly spraying the scent everywhere in her store in Paris, just letting the intriguing aroma permeate the space.
Creating curiosity.
Exactly. Then, very discreetly, she slipped bottles without labels into the shopping bags of her wealthiest, most influential clients, her best customers.
Giving it away secretly.
Yes. This immediately generated buzz. Word of mouth started spreading among the elite about this strange new scent, rather haunting and impossible to identify. People started asking, what is that amazing perfume you're wearing?
Ah, so it became exclusive, something you had to be in the know about.
Precisely. The buzz created covetousness. Because fundamentally, people desire what other people desire, especially people they admire or envy.
Social proof.
The ultimate social proof. Then later, she ensured her objects or brand were seen everywhere. She understood visibility. Greene even notes she might have subtly encouraged piracy or knockoffs later on.
Really? Why would she do that?
Because she knew that ubiquity, seeing it everywhere, would only amplify the desire, creating this powerful viral pull. It makes the object seem even more desirable because everyone seems to want it.
Wow. It wasn't just about the scent itself, then?
No, it was pure psychological magic, as Greene describes it. She took relatively ordinary ingredients and, through marketing, storytelling, and understanding human desire, transformed them into this object of intense, almost obsessive wanting.
Proving his point, I guess, that people do not want truth and honesty. They want fantasy and objects of desire.
It's a powerful illustration of that principle in action. She tapped directly into imagination and social dynamics.
Wow. Okay, this whole journey has been, well, an incredible deep dive. We've really gone into some hidden corners of what makes us tick. Exploring our own irrationality, learning how to maybe read the subtle cues of character in others, and now understanding how desire really works, often beneath the surface.
It really covers a lot of ground. And the key takeaway, I think Greene would argue, is that understanding these laws isn't about becoming cynical or manipulative.
It's not a toolkit for exploitation.
No, not ideally. It's really about gaining clarity, profound clarity, both about yourself and how you operate, and about your interactions with the world around you.
Clarity leading to what?
Leading to becoming, as he puts it, a calmer and more strategic observer of people. Being able to step back from the constant emotional drama that often ensnares us.
Freeing yourself up mentally.
Exactly. And ultimately gaining better control of what we do and what happens to us. Not absolute control, maybe, but significantly better control. And that kind of clarity, Greene suggests, it really can change the course of your lives in so many ways.
What strikes me as really fascinating here, though, is that Greene doesn't just leave it at understanding others. He brings it back to the self. He suggests this knowledge actually empowers you to alter your own negative patterns.
Yes, because you start to see them clearly, perhaps for the first time.
And also to realize that fundamentally we are all cut from the same cloth. We all share these deep tendencies, these irrationalities, these desires. It fosters a kind of empathy.
It absolutely can. Seeing the same struggles and patterns in others that you recognize, however uncomfortably, in yourself. It allows you to embrace being a complete individual, as he says, flaws, shadows, and all.
So it's not about achieving perfection, but embracing the whole complex picture of human nature within ourselves, a journey of self-mastery through acceptance.
Acceptance and understanding, yes. You accept your true nature, including the less desirable parts, the shadow, and learn to channel this energy more productively, more consciously, rather than letting it run the show unconsciously.
And if we try to connect this to the really big picture, where does this lead?
Well, Greene seems to suggest that the ultimate freedom, the real liberation, comes from moving beyond just understanding these laws to adopting a more generous spirit.
Generous towards others.
Towards others, yes, because you understand their struggles and flaws mirror your own. But also, crucially, generous towards yourself, letting go of self-recrimination for having these natural human tendencies.
Liberating our minds from all the petty emotions, the reactivity.
Exactly. Making a conscious choice to cultivate a more expansive, more discerning, maybe even a more forgiving attitude toward life itself. It's like that William James quote Greene might appreciate that the greatest discovery is that humans can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind.
A shift in attitude based on deeper understanding.
So thinking about all this, what hidden truths about human nature may be lurking in your own life will you dare to explore next? How might really grappling with these laws shift your approach to your goals, your relationships, or even just dealing with that stranger within yourself?